How's it going, everybody? Today I want to talk to you about the home buying process and take you on a step-by-step tutorial taking you through from start all the way to finish how you buy a home in 2021. So the first step on my list, and admittedly I might be a bit biased here, but is to find a realtor. They're going to be able to walk you through the process and explain any questions. I can only get into so much detail here. They're also going to be able to refer you to lenders that they know and have worked with, and that can be really important because they're going to know, hey, this person could get the job done. They might be able to answer a text over the weekend, whereas if you just get it through one of the bigger companies, you might not be able to get that service or access over the weekend if something should come up. They'll also kind of be able to help you think about maybe some different neighborhoods that you hadn't considered before, and it can save you some time if you are dead set on one place and you kind of go down all the process and realize, hey, there was actually a bunch of other homes in this other neighborhood that I would have liked, but I just didn't think of it. So step number 2 is to get pre-approved or pre-qualified. The mistake that I see happening all of the time, I did it myself before I got my real estate license because I just didn't know, is you're on Zillow, you're on Redfin, you're on Realtor.com, you're looking at homes that you want to buy, and you're waiting until the perfect one comes on. You see that house and you say, great, I want to buy it. But at that point, you're already kind of behind the competition because now you need to get pre-approved, and that can sometimes take multiple days if your financial situation isn't very cut and dry. So that's why I highly recommend do that right away. You might be pre-approved for more than you think, so you might be able to afford more house than you were initially budgeting for. Or on the flip side, you might not be able to afford as much as you thought, and then you kind of just wasted all of this time looking at homes that are just out of your grasp, at least at the moment. Also, in this market, if you're putting in an offer without a pre-approval or a pre-qualification letter, you might as well be basically throwing it in the trash, at least here in Sacramento, and I think most of the country. I hear there's some markets that aren't quite as hot, but realistically, if you're going to be competing against someone else, they're going to have a letter, and it's a prerequisite to even have them consider it. So definitely want to get that done right away. So a couple tips for finding a lender. First, like I mentioned before, talk to your realtor. They're probably going to know someone that they could recommend, if not a few options they know will be able to get the job done. Number 2, I would recommend find someone local, and that doesn't necessarily mean small mom and pop kind of firm. It could be a huge national company, but I want them to have a local person who deals with this market all the time and who has some more skin in the game. So if their reputation is tarnished because they really messed up on your transaction, word's going to get around. They're really going to want to do well. Whereas someone who's working from a city across the country and might not work in your city, your market all that often, they just have less to lose. And if they get a bad reputation in Sacramento, oh well, they're probably not going to be doing many loans out here anyway. Whereas a local person, this is where all of their business is going to be. They're really going to want to do a good job. Step number 3 is the search phase. This is kind of where people, I think, normally jump to when they get started. But I'm saying step number 3 because there's a little bit of legwork you want to do before. So in case you find it, you're ready to go. So first thing, you want to decide your wants and your needs. Your needs being you have to have it. A lot of times that's things like number of bedrooms. It needs to have at least 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, and I need a garage. Stuff like that. Like if it doesn't have it, you're not even going to consider it. Then you want to then think about your wants. Maybe I want some established trees. I want a pool, but I don't necessarily need it. I would get a house without it. That kind of stuff. Like a inside Batman themed trampoline room that you could call a bat cave. That's definitely a need. I would say don't compromise there. Get the bat cave. Next, I would recommend driving around some of the neighborhoods that you're considering. Sometimes you just look at them on the map, and you look at a photo and it looks great. But until you kind of drive around and get a feel for the area, you might decide, you know what, I don't like it, or hey, you know what, I like this area that's more expensive, but I almost like it just as much in this other more affordable area. So let's look there and try to save some money. And that can also save you from, an afternoon of your Saturday and my Saturday spent driving around, a neighborhood that right when you get there, you know what, I don't really like it. And now we've just spent 4 hours on a Saturday looking at homes that kind of from the beginning you knew you didn't really want. Lastly, in this market where it's really tough on buyers and there might not be the selection or the inventory to choose from, I like to tell my clients to think in terms of what's changeable and what's not changeable. So if there's a bathroom and it's outdated, it's got that ugly pink tile, from the 70s, although, a lot of people are really liking that now. You don't want to rule off a place completely if there's something like that. It's painted the wrong color. That always gets me. You could easily paint. Stuff like that. It's changeable. But if it's near a busy intersection and that's going to bother you, that ain't changing. So you can rule that one off. But that gives you a little bit more flexibility, and sometimes you kind of need that in 2021 in order to find a house that you're gonna love. Step number 4, putting together the offer. I'm gonna do a longer video on this just because this topic you could get really deep on, so just kind of want to briefly go through it here. But the main components that you're gonna think about for an offer: big one, purchase price. You have your contingencies. You have a split of fees. You have what appliances are going to stay, or that you're going to ask for or not ask for. The type of financing, whether you're doing FHA, conventional, and in this market, naming rights for your firstborn child. That's actually been coming up quite a lot. Not actually. Please don't offer that. One tip I have when thinking about putting in an offer, and in particular your purchase price, is to think about the number that if you didn't get it, you feel okay because that was the most you were going to offer. All too often I hear of clients that said, oh dang, it went for that, I would have offered that. Well, if you would have offered that, you should have, because in this market it's very competitive. It's 2021 here in Sacramento. Things are going like hotcakes. There's just not enough supply. Don't go into putting in an offer thinking you're going to get a deal. It does happen. It's not totally rare, but it's not the norm in this market. So you don't want to be kicking yourself over, $5,000, which in the long run is not that much money. It's going to be financed over 30 years or so. So don't kind of miss the forest for the trees, if that makes sense. I think I used that expression right. I don't know. I'll look that up later and then maybe edit that out if I didn't. Step number 5, you put in an offer, it got accepted, you're in contract. Congratulations. The first thing you want to do, get that deposit into escrow ASAP. You have 3 business days to do that. The next thing that comes up is inspections and disclosures galore. You're going to get just inundated with a ton of disclosures from the seller, both general stuff like, information on smoke detectors and water heaters, and if the house was built before 1978, about a lead paint disclosure. In addition to the general disclosures, there's also going to be specific property-related disclosures coming from the seller. Here in California, those are typically the TDS and the SPQ, Seller Property Questionnaire, and the Transfer Disclosure Statement. And that's essentially just them going through the house and saying, hey, this faucet's, a little loose, and there was this issue with this thing, and hey, there's some road noise when you're out back, and just kind of disclosing stuff so that as you're going through, you could say, oh, let me investigate that a bit further, and also kind of clears them of liability, so you don't get down the road and say, hey, you never told me that, the faucet leaked, and then they could say, yes, I did. Here's the documentation. When it comes to inspections, I always recommend that my clients get a home and a pest inspection. Those two you really, really want to have. The pest inspection, I'll sometimes say you don't need to get it if the seller had just done one with a reputable company right before, and you could see that report and see if they did anything. But it still doesn't hurt to get your own if you're worried about that. The cost for those, typically for a home inspection, anywhere between $350 to say $500, $550. If there's you could add on some things if there's, hey, second story and it's over this size of the pool, but in that range. A pest inspection will be $100, $150 in that range. Other inspections you may consider doing, and you should talk to your realtor to see, if they would recommend them, is a sewer inspection, a roof inspection. If you want to get the appliances like the AC checked out, or if you want to get a structural engineer out there. Although I typically would only do the structural engineer if we had reason to believe, they did the home inspection and he recommended to get a structural engineer because something looked, amiss. Something looked precarious or dangerous, and he wanted to get someone out there. Using those inspection reports, we're going to put together our request for repairs. This is where we ask for, small and large items to be fixed. My recommendation here, and especially in this market where, the seller might have had multiple, say 20 offers, which is not uncommon, but even if they had 6 other offers, they're going to have a lot more power to kind of say no if you ask for everything under the sun to be fixed, and they'll kind of say, no, I'm not going to do anything. We'll just take the, we'll reach out to the next buyer in line and see if they're okay, not asking for those. So you kind of want to ask for reasonable stuff. And when thinking about this, I like to think about the big items and let the smaller ones slide, because you don't want to ask for 12 items and they do all of the easy ones. They'll say, yeah, hey, we'll do, we'll replace smoke detectors and we'll change out the doorknob that's a little loose, and we'll put some WD-40 in the garage door so it doesn't creak when it opens. But you know what? The floor that's soft, and the roof that needs to get repaired, and the electrical box, which is, totally unsafe and can be dangerous. We're not going to do those. But look, we did half of the things that you asked for. So you want to ask for the bigger ticket items, because if they're only going to do a few, you want to make sure that they're doing the bigger ones. I tend to like to ask them to do the actual repairs themselves and then have them come back to us and say, hey, no, we'll do a credit for something, rather than just putting the credit out first, because sometimes, especially if you itemize everything, you don't want to get into the, hey, no, I could actually replace XYZ, part, or fix XYZ thing for cheaper, and you don't kind of want to get into haggling over kind of the smaller stuff. Throughout this whole process, you will have been talking with your loan officer, getting them the documents that they need, and making sure that, whenever they need a document, they get it right away, because they need to get basically put together a case to send to the underwriters to say, hey, this person's, is creditworthy and will repay this loan. So we want to get that approved. And then also you will have ordered an appraisal. Typically it's between, $400 to $600 in that range. And that's going to be like an inspector, but different in that they're just going out to the house and comparing it to the other sales in the market and saying, hey, is this home worth the purchase price? And they're going to give an educated estimate of the value that the bank is going to use to decide how much they're going to loan for. If the appraisal comes back at purchase price or above, great, you're in the clear, no issues there. But if it comes in low, then we have some decisions to make. So you can either walk away from the deal. If you still have your appraisal contingency, you can come up with the difference as a buyer. So if it's, you're in contract for 400 and the appraisal comes in at 390, you could come in with an extra $10,000 cash to make up that difference. Or the seller can come down and move the purchase price down to 390. If they agree, or a combination of those last two. So maybe they come down to 395 and you put in $5,000 cash to kind of make up that difference. And that's what's happening with a lot of homes in this market where, the listing agent and the sellers know, this house isn't going to appraise. So we're going to want them to either remove their appraisal contingency or commit to saying that they'll put in X amount of dollars over the appraisal in the event of a low appraisal. So you've gotten your request for repairs, you've gotten through all that process, it appraised, you're coming near the end. The next step is to sign your loan documents. That's going to be 2 to 3 days before close. And then also wire over your closing costs. And those can be in the range of 2 to 3%, because that's going to include prepays for taxes and insurance, and then also your lender fees, your escrow fees, how you split county and city transfer tax. There's a lot of things that kind of get into that, and you'll get the closing disclosure before that will explain exactly how much is needed, and you'll have a good sense of what those numbers are before you actually get to that point where you need to wire over the money. So the last step is get your keys, move into your house, and then make sure you write your realtor a glowing review. That one's the most important part of the entire purchasing process. Again, not biased at all. And that's all. So thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful or informative. If you have any questions, I know this video was pretty broad, not super specific. So if you have any questions about a specific scenario or you need some clarification on something, please drop a comment below or reach out to me either directly or on social media. I'm always happy to chat. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.